Nathan Cole stood at the tall window of the Galactic Concorde's assembly hall, watching ships from a dozen different species drift past the station. He wore the simple gray suit of a minor diplomat, nothing fancy, nothing that would draw attention. That was the point. For 300 years, humanity had worked very hard to be forgettable. Behind him, representatives from the 17 species of the Concorde argued about trade routes and mining rights. The Valari complained about tariffs. The Keth demanded more seats on the Security Council. The massive Gorath ambassador slept in his chair, as he did during most meetings. Nobody paid attention to the human standing by the window. Nobody ever did. Nathan smiled to himself. Everything was going according to plan. Back on Earth, in a bunker buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Admiral Laura Bennett studied holographic displays showing the true state of human military power. The maps showed hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, secret training facilities on the dark side of the moon, research stations beyond the edge of the solar system where scientists developed weapons that would terrify any species in the known galaxy. The official records said humanity had 32 combat ships. Old designs, weak shields, basic missiles. Enough to defend against pirates. Nothing more. The real number was 3,427. And those were just the ones currently active. Laura had spent her entire career keeping this secret. Her father had kept it before her. His mother before him. For 3 centuries, generation after generation of military leaders had built humanity's true fleet while showing the galaxy only weakness. It had started after first contact, when humans learned the truth about the universe. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. Species that showed strength were seen as threats. Threats were eliminated or conquered. The Concorde itself had formed only after the 5 strongest species had fought themselves to exhaustion, agreeing to peace because none of them could win. The early human leaders had watched and learned. They saw how the Vecthari Dominion crushed weaker species and took their worlds. They saw how the Concorde did nothing to stop it, because stopping it would mean war. They understood that in this galaxy, the weak died and the strong killed each other. So humanity chose a third path. They would appear weak while becoming strong. They would smile and trade and bow their heads while secretly building the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. And they would wait. The waiting had been the hardest part. Over the centuries, humanity had watched terrible things happen. Species had been enslaved. Worlds had been burned. Billions had died. And humans had done nothing, because revealing their power too soon would have meant destruction. But now, sitting in her command chair, Laura wondered if the waiting was finally coming to an end. The alert had come 3 hours ago. The Vecthari Dominion had announced its intention to expand into Sector 7. That sector contained 12 inhabited worlds, belonging to minor species under Concorde protection. It also contained New Haven, humanity's largest colony outside the solar system. 4 million people lived there. Families, children, people who had built homes and farms and cities on a world far from Earth. The Vecthari saw them as easy targets. Laura pulled up the intelligence reports. The Dominion was gathering a fleet, 200 warships, according to the data. For the Vecthari, this was a serious force. For humanity, it was barely worth noticing. But nobody knew that. Nobody could know that. She opened a secure channel to Earth. In Geneva, the World Defense Council was already in session when Laura's face appeared on the main screen. General Chris Blake sat at the head of the table, his gray hair cut short, his face lined with decades of difficult decisions. Around him sat the leaders of every major military branch, plus representatives from the civilian government. "Admiral Bennett," Chris said, "we've received your report. What's your assessment?" Laura kept her voice calm. "The Vecthari fleet will reach New Haven in approximately 6 days. Their commander is named Zethkar. He's conquered 11 worlds for the Dominion. He's never lost a battle. He's also never faced a real opponent. And the Concorde? Doing what they always do, forming committees, drafting statements of concern. The Valari ambassador suggested offering the Vecthari a trade deal in exchange for leaving New Haven alone. A bitter laugh went around the table. Everyone knew what conquered protection was worth. Nothing. Chris leaned forward. "What are our options?" Laura had thought about this for hours. She had run simulations. She had consulted with her staff. and she had come to a conclusion that both thrilled and terrified her. We have two choices. The first is evacuation. We can pull our people off New Haven before the Vekthari arrive. Abandon the colony. Let them take an empty world. And the second? Laura took a breath. We reveal ourselves. We bring out the real fleet. We show the galaxy what humanity has been building for 300 years. Silence filled the room. Everyone understood what this meant. 3 centuries of careful deception ended in a single day. Every species in the galaxy would suddenly see humans as the threat they truly were. Everything would change. Chris looked around the table. Thoughts? A woman at the far end spoke up. Secretary of State Diana Ross, the highest-ranking civilian in the room. If we evacuate, we save 4 million lives today. But what about tomorrow? What about the next colony the Vekthari target? Do we keep running forever? And if we reveal ourselves, another voice added, we might start a war with the entire galaxy. Every species will be afraid of us. Some might attack before we can attack them. Let them try, Laura said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. I've spent my entire life preparing for this moment. So did my father. So did my grandmother. We didn't build this fleet to hide forever. We built it to protect humanity. And right now, 4 million of our people need protection. Chris studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. We put it to a vote. All in favor of revealing our true military capabilities to defend New Haven? One by one, hands rose around the table. Every single person voted yes. Chris turned back to the screen. Admiral Bennett, you have your orders. Defend our people. And show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens humanity. Laura felt her heart racing, but her voice stayed steady. Understood, sir. The masquerade is over. She closed the channel and looked at the display showing the hidden fleet. Thousands of ships, waiting in darkness. Crews who had trained their entire lives for a battle that might never come. Now it was coming. Laura opened a fleet-wide channel. All commands, this is Admiral Bennett. Condition Alpha. I repeat, Condition Alpha. Prepare for full deployment. We're going to war. Across the solar system and beyond, lights came on in hidden stations. Engines powered up. Weapons systems activated. The sleeping giant was finally waking up, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Burning Claw, and watched the stars stretch into lines as his fleet jumped through folded space. 200 warships followed behind him, each one crewed by warriors who had conquered worlds and crushed resistance across a dozen star systems. This was the largest fleet the Dominion had assembled in 50 years, and their target was a single human colony. Zethkar found it almost insulting. The Dominion Council had ordered this attack as a message to the Galactic Concord. The humans were weak. Everyone knew that. Taking their colony would prove that the Concord could not protect its members. Other species would see this and understand that resistance was pointless. Still, orders were orders. Zethkar would crush the humans, claim their world, and add another victory to his record. Then perhaps the Council would give him a worthy challenge. The jump ended, and New Haven appeared on the view screen. A blue and green world, covered with forests and oceans. Scanners showed cities scattered across the main continent. 4 million humans, going about their simple lives, unaware that death had arrived. Zethkar's communications officer looked up from her console. Commander? We're receiving a transmission from the surface. The surrender already? Zethkar laughed. That was quick. Put it through. Zethkar. The screen flickered, and a human face appeared. A male, wearing a simple gray uniform. His expression was calm, almost bored. Behind him, Zethkar could see what looked like a basic control room. Nothing impressive. This is Captain Derek Palmer, of the New Haven Colonial Defense Force, the human said. You have entered human territory without permission. You have 24 hours to withdraw your fleet. This is not a request. Zethkar stared at the screen. Then he started laughing. Around him, his bridge crew joined in. The sound echoed off the metal walls. Human, Zethkar said when he finally stopped laughing. Do you understand what is happening? I have 200 warships. You have what? A few patrol boats? Some ground batteries? I could glass your entire world in an hour. Captain Palmer's expression didn't change. You have 24 hours. Use them wisely. The transmission ended. Zethkar shook his head in amazement. The humans were either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. He turned to his tactical officer. What do the scanners show? How many ships do they have? The officer studied his console. I'm reading 12 vessels in orbit, Commander. Small craft. Defensive weapons only. Our intelligence reports said the humans have about 30 combat ships in their entire fleet. Most of those are near their homeworld. 30 ships. Zethkar sat back in his command chair. And they think they can threaten me. Prepare the fleet for attack. We'll begin the bombardment at dawn. Local time. I want the humans to see their sun rise one last time before we take everything from them. Far away, on the other side of the galaxy, that same transmission was being watched by millions. The Galactic Concord had monitoring stations everywhere, and the confrontation at New Haven was being broadcast on every news channel. Species that had never heard of humans were suddenly watching them face down the Vekthari Dominion. Most viewers expected a quick massacre. The Vekthari were known for their brutality. The humans were known for nothing at all. In the Concord Assembly Hall, Nathan Cole stood before the gathered ambassadors. For once, everyone was paying attention to him. Ambassador Cole, the Valari representative said, her voice dripping with what might have been concern or might have been condescension. Perhaps you should consider negotiating. The Dominion might accept a tribute payment in exchange for leaving your colony intact. We could facilitate discussions. Nathan smiled politely. Thank you for the offer. But I don't think that will be necessary. You don't understand. The Gorath ambassador had woken up, his massive body shifting forward. The Vekthari don't negotiate. They take what they want. Your colony is lost. The question is whether you lose just the colony or your entire species. We appreciate your concern, Nathan said. But humanity will handle this situation ourselves. The ambassadors exchanged glances. Several of them looked at Nathan with something like pity. They had seen this before. Small species, facing extinction, refusing to accept reality until it was too late. Nathan caught the looks and kept smiling. They had no idea. On New Haven, the mood was very different. Captain Derek Palmer walked through the underground bunker that served as the Colonial Defense Headquarters. Around him, officers moved with calm efficiency, preparing for what was coming. The evacuation is complete. His second-in-command reported. All civilians have been moved to the shelters. Essential personnel only remain at their posts. Derek nodded. Good. And the message? Sent to Earth 6 hours ago. We received confirmation that the fleet is mobilizing. Derek looked at the clock on the wall. 24 hours. That was how long he had given the Vekthari. It was also how long it would take for the real human fleet to arrive. He thought about his family, safe in one of the deep shelters. His wife, Maria. His 2 daughters, both under 10 years old. They didn't know what was about to happen. Nobody on New Haven did, except for a handful of officers who had been briefed on humanity's true capabilities. For 300 years, this secret had been kept. Millions of people had lived and died never knowing what their species had built. Never knowing what humanity was really capable of. Now the secret was about to come out. Derek pulled up the tactical display. The Vekthari fleet was holding position just outside the planet's defensive perimeter. 200 ships, all of them larger and better armed than anything in the Colonial Defense Force. By any normal calculation, the humans were completely outmatched. But this wasn't a normal calculation. The hours passed slowly. On the Vekthari flagship, Commander Zethkar watched reports from his scouts. The humans were doing exactly what he expected. Evacuating civilians, reinforcing defensive positions, preparing for a last stand that would mean nothing. One of his officers approached. Commander, we're picking up some unusual readings at the edge of the system. Unusual how? Energy signatures. Very faint. Could be sensor ghosts. Zethkar waved his hand dismissively. The humans have nothing out there. Focus on the planet. The officer hesitated but obeyed. On Earth, Admiral Laura Bennett stepped onto the bridge of her flagship, the Vanguard. Around her, officers manned their stations with the quiet confidence of people who had trained their whole lives for this moment. Fleet status? She asked. All 3,427 vessels report ready. Her tactical officer responded. Jump coordinates are locked. We can depart on your command. Laura looked at the main view screen. It showed a star map, with New Haven highlighted in red. Her people were there. 4 million of them, waiting for rescue. Trusting that someone would come, she thought about all the times humanity had wanted to act but couldn't. All the atrocities they had watched from the shadows. All the deaths they could have prevented if they had revealed themselves sooner. No more waiting. No more hiding. All ships, she said, her voice carrying across the fleet through quantum-encrypted channels. Prepare for jump. It's time to show the galaxy who we really are. The countdown began. In minutes, 3,000 ships would appear in the skies above New Haven, and the universe would never be the same. The sun rose over New Haven's main continent, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. In the cities below, the streets were empty. 4 million people huddled in underground shelters, holding their children, praying to whatever gods they believed in. Above them, Commander Zethkar gave the order to attack. All ships, begin bombardment. Target the major cities first. I want the humans to see their world burn. The Vekthari fleet moved forward, weapons charging, 200 warships in perfect formation, ready to unleash destruction on a defenseless planet. Then the sky tore open. It started as a flicker, like heat rising from hot sand. Then the flickers became rifts, tears in the fabric of space itself. They appeared everywhere, surrounding the Vekthari fleet like a cage of light, and ships came through. Not tens, not hundreds, thousands. The first to emerge was the Vanguard, Admiral Laura Bennett's flagship. It was 3 times larger than any Vekthari vessel. Its hull covered with weapons that shouldn't exist. Behind it came carriers that could have swallowed the Burning Claw whole, dreadnoughts bristling with cannon batteries, cruisers moving in perfect synchronized formations, fighters pouring out of launch bays like swarms of angry insects. On the bridge of the Burning Claw, every alarm was screaming. Officers shouted over each other, trying to make sense of what their sensors were telling them. 3,000 contacts. No more. The sensors can't count them all. Those energy signatures, that's not possible. Commander, what do we do? Zethkar stood frozen at his command post, staring at the view screen. His fleet was surrounded. Completely, utterly surrounded by a force so large that his 200 ships looked like toys. This was impossible. Humans didn't have ships like this. Humans didn't have technology like this. The intelligence reports said. The intelligence reports were wrong. Everything was wrong. A transmission came through on all frequencies. Admiral Bennett's face appeared on every screen in the Vekthari fleet, and on every news channel across the galaxy. This is Admiral Laura Bennett, of the United Earth Navy. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant, like she was discussing the weather. For 300 years, humanity has watched the galaxy tear itself apart through war, conquest, and genocide. We built our true fleet in secret, hoping we would never need it. You have forced our hand. She paused, letting the words sink in. The Vekthari Dominion has 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. Every ship, every weapon, every conquered world released. Refuse, and we will demonstrate what happens when humanity goes to war. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, 17 species stared at their screens in shock. The Valari ambassador dropped her drink. The Gorath ambassador was fully awake for the first time in decades. Even the ancient Keth, who had seen empires rise and fall for 10,000 years, whispered among themselves in disbelief. 3,000 ships, hidden for 3 centuries. Built under the noses of every intelligence agency in the Concord, the humans had fooled them all. On the Burning Claw, Commander Zethkar finally found his voice. Get me a secure channel to the Dominion Council. Now. Minutes later, he was speaking with High Commander Vortek, leader of all Vekthari military forces. You want to retreat? Vortek's voice was filled with contempt. Because the humans showed up with a few large ships? You command 200 vessels, Zethkar. Use them, High Commander. You don't understand. These ships, their weapons, I've never seen anything like them. My tactical officers can't even identify half of what they're pointing at us. Excuses. The Dominion does not retreat. We do not surrender. We conquer. That is what we are. Attack the human fleet. Destroy their flagship. Show them that numbers alone do not win wars. The channel closed. Zethkar looked at his officers. They looked back at him with fear in their eyes. They had all seen the same things he had. They all knew what those human ships meant. But orders were orders. The Dominion did not surrender. It was their oldest law, their deepest belief. All ships, Zethkar said, his voice hollow. Prepare to attack. On the vanguard, Admiral Bennett watched the Vekthari fleet begin to move. She felt something that might have been pity. They didn't understand. They couldn't understand. Humanity had not built this fleet through luck or accident. They had built it through 300 years of careful planning. Drawing on the combined knowledge of billions of people, they had studied every weapon ever used in galactic history. They had improved on all of them. They had invented new ones. And they had trained. Endlessly. Relentlessly. Generation after generation of soldiers who knew that one day they would face this moment. Admiral, her tactical officer said, the Vekthari are powering weapons. Laura nodded. Light them up. The human fleet opened fire. In the shelters beneath New Haven, millions of people heard the sound. It came through the rock and metal above them, a deep rumbling thunder that went on and on. Children cried. Adults held each other. Nobody knew what was happening. Captain Derek Palmer watched from his bunker, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Vekthari fleet was marked in red. One by one, the red dots were disappearing. Human weapons tore through Vekthari shields like they weren't there. Gravitational lances crushed warships into balls of twisted metal. Quantum disruptors simply erased vessels from existence. Drone swarms, millions of them, swarmed over enemy ships, finding weak points, exploiting them, moving on to the next target. The Vekthari fired back, but their weapons seemed to do nothing. Human shields absorbed everything they threw. Human ships dodged and weaved with impossible precision. Guided by AI systems that could predict enemy movements before they happened, it was not a battle. It was a demonstration. In 11 minutes, 180 Vekthari ships were destroyed. The remaining 20 were disabled, drifting in space, their crews alive but helpless. The Burning Claw was among them. Commander Zethkar sat in his command chair, surrounded by darkness and silence. His ship's power was gone. His weapons were gone. Everything was gone. A human shuttle docked with his vessel. Minutes later, soldiers in advanced combat armor walked onto his bridge. They moved with perfect discipline, securing the room in seconds. Then Admiral Bennett herself walked in. She was smaller than Zethkar had expected. An older human female, gray hair cut short, wearing a simple naval uniform. Nothing about her appearance suggested power, but her eyes did. Commander Zethkar, she said, your fleet is destroyed. Your ship is captured. Your war is over. Zethkar wanted to say something defiant, something worthy of a Vekthari warrior. But when he opened his mouth, no words came out. He had never lost before. He had never even imagined losing. And now, he had lost everything in less time than it took to eat a meal. Laura Bennett looked at him without anger, without triumph. Only sadness. I'm going to send you home, she said. You're going to tell your Dominion Council what happened here. You're going to tell them that humanity is no longer hiding. And you're going to give them a choice. She stepped closer. Surrender everything. Free every species you've conquered. Disarm your fleet. Accept judgment for your crimes. Do this, and your people will live. And if we refuse, Laura's expression didn't change. Then we will come to you. And what happened here today will look like mercy. She turned and walked away, leaving Zethkar alone with his defeat and his fear. The galaxy had just changed forever. And the humans were only getting started. Commander Zethkar's shuttle landed on Vekthar Prime 3 days after the Battle of New Haven. He walked down the ramp on legs that still felt weak. into the capital city he had left as a conqueror, and returned to as a broken man. The Dominion Council was waiting for him. High Commander Vortek sat at the center of the great table, flanked by the 12 senior commanders who ruled Vekthari military forces. Their faces showed no expression as Zethkar approached. "Report," Vortek said. Zethkar told them everything. The hidden fleet. The impossible weapons. The 11-minute battle that had destroyed 180 ships without a single human casualty. He spoke for an hour, describing every detail, every moment of horror. When he finished, silence filled the chamber. Then Vortek laughed. 180 ships, the High Commander said. A tragedy, yes. But the Dominion has thousands of vessels. We control 47 worlds. One lost battle does not end an empire. Zethkar shook his head. High Commander, you weren't there. These humans, they're not like any species we've faced. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their tactics are perfect. They knew what we would do before we did it. Because you were predictable. Because you attacked when you should have retreated and gathered intelligence. Vortek stood up, his massive frame towering over the table. I will not surrender the Dominion to a species of soft-skinned weaklings because one commander lost his nerve. They gave us 24 hours, Zethkar said quietly. The deadline has passed. As if in answer, alarms began blaring throughout the building. A junior officer rushed into the chamber, his face pale with terror. High Commander, human ships have appeared in orbit. Hundreds of them. Vortek strode to the window. Above the city, the sky was filled with vessels. Human carriers blocked out the sun, fighters swarmed like insects, and in the center of it all, the massive shape of the Vanguard hung like a judgment from the gods. Admiral Bennett's voice came through every speaker on the planet. People of the Vekthari Dominion. 24 hours ago, I offered your leaders a choice. They chose wrong. But I do not punish entire species for the decisions of their rulers. I am going to give you one more chance. 100 Bigot. On the Vanguard, Laura stood on the bridge, watching the feeds from the surface. Billions of Vekthari were looking up at the sky, waiting to see what would happen next. Your military has oppressed you for centuries, she continued. They have sent your sons and daughters to die in pointless wars of conquest. They have told you that strength means cruelty, that power means destruction. They were wrong. She nodded to her tactical officer. I am going to demonstrate what true power looks like. From every human ship, beams of light shot down toward the surface. But they did not strike cities or civilians. They struck military installations, weapons factories, defense platforms, army bases, warship construction yards. The Vekthari military infrastructure, built over thousands of years, was systematically erased in a single afternoon. The council chamber shook as explosions rocked the capital. Through the window, Vortek watched his life's work disappear in fire and light. Shipyards that had built the fleet he commanded, training facilities where he had learned to fight. All of it, gone, but not a single civilian area was touched. Not one home. Not one school. Not one hospital. The humans were being precise, terrifyingly, impossibly precise. When the bombardment ended, Admiral Bennett spoke again. The Vekthari military no longer exists. Your warships are scrap, your weapons are dust, but your people are alive, all of them. She paused. This is how humanity fights. We do not murder civilians. We do not enslave the defeated. We destroy only what threatens us, and we spare everyone else. Remember this. Teach it to your children. On the surface, the Dominion Council sat in stunned silence. Their power was gone. Their empire was broken. And they were still alive, which somehow made it worse. Over the following weeks, the human fleet moved from world to world. Every species the Vekthari had conquered was liberated. Slave camps were opened. Prisoners were freed. Occupation forces surrendered without a fight, because there was nothing left to fight with. Lieutenant Megan Torres led one of the Marine units that handled the liberations. She had trained for years for this work, learning the languages and customs of a dozen species, preparing to bring freedom to those who had lost it. On a world called Theral, she walked into a labor camp where the Vekthari had worked prisoners to death for 50 years. The survivors were thin and scared, blinking in the sunlight as the gates opened. "Who are you?" one of them asked in a trembling voice. "We're humans," Megan said. "We're here to take you home." The former prisoner stared at her. "But humans are weak. Everyone knows that. How could you defeat the Dominion?" Megan smiled sadly. "We're not weak. We just let everyone think we were. It was easier that way." She helped the survivors onto transport ships, gave them food and medicine, and sent them back to their homeworlds. And she did this over and over, on world after world, until the last prisoner was free. Back on Earth, the World Defense Council met to discuss what came next. General Chris Blake presided over the meeting. His face tired but satisfied. "The Vecthari Dominion has been neutralized," he reported. "Their military leadership is in custody, awaiting trial. Their conquered territories have been liberated. Estimated civilian casualties from our campaign: 0. 0? Secretary of State Diana Ross raised an eyebrow. "That seems almost unbelievable." "Our targeting systems are very good," Admiral Bennett said from her seat at the table. "And we were very careful. Humanity has seen what happens when wars kill innocents. We decided a long time ago that we would do better." Diana nodded slowly. "The galaxy is watching us. Every species knows what we did, what we can do. The question is, what do we do with that power?" It was a question that had haunted humanity for 300 years. They had built the most powerful military force in galactic history. They could conquer the entire Concord if they wanted to. Nobody could stop them. But that wasn't why they had built the fleet. "We do exactly what we always planned to do," Chris said. "We protect people who can't protect themselves. We stop genocides and conquests. We show the galaxy that there's a better way to exist together." "And if other species see us as the threat now?" Diana asked. Laura Bennett spoke up. "Then we'll have to prove them wrong, not through words, but through actions. Every decision we make from now on will show the galaxy who humanity really is." She thought about the centuries of hiding, the generations of soldiers who had trained and prepared, hoping they would never have to fight, the terrible patience that had brought them to this moment. "We didn't build this fleet to conquer," she said. "We built it to protect. Now we have to live up to that promise." The council agreed. Humanity would not become the new tyrants of the galaxy. They would be something new. Something the universe had never seen before. They would be guardians. And for the first time in galactic history, the weak would have someone to defend them. 6 months had passed since the Battle of New Haven. The galaxy had changed in ways that nobody could have predicted. The Galactic Concord Assembly Hall was more crowded than it had ever been. Representatives from all 17 member species filled the main chamber, along with delegations from dozens of smaller civilizations that had never been allowed to speak here before. The freed species, the former slaves, the ones who had been invisible until humanity gave them a voice. Ambassador Nathan Cole walked to the central podium. He no longer wore the simple gray suit of a minor diplomat. Now he wore the formal uniform of Earth's senior ambassador. Dark blue with silver trim, carrying the weight of 3,000 warships and the trust of billions. The hall fell silent as he began to speak. "Distinguished representatives," Nathan said. 6 months ago, humanity revealed a secret we had kept for 300 years. Many of you felt afraid. Some of you still do. I understand that fear. We have power that no species in this galaxy has ever possessed." He looked around the chamber, meeting eyes from a dozen different species. "But power alone does not define who we are. Actions do. In the past 6 months, humanity has liberated 47 worlds. We have freed over 2 billion beings from slavery and oppression. We have put war criminals on trial. And we have not claimed a single planet, not demanded a single credit, not taken any revenge." A murmur ran through the crowd. It was true, all of it. The humans had done everything they promised and nothing more. They had used their terrifying power only to heal, not to harm. "We hid because we wanted peace," Nathan continued. "We built weapons because peace must be defended. We revealed ourselves because innocents were dying and no one else would act." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "We have no interest in empire. We have no desire to rule. But understand this clearly. Humanity will never again tolerate genocide, conquest, or the enslavement of any species. The galaxy has a protector now, whether it wanted one or not. In the gallery above the main floor, Captain Katie Sullivan watched the speech. She was the youngest officer on Admiral Bennett's staff, just 28 years old. Born after the secret fleet was already built, she had grown up believing that humanity was weak, that they survived only through luck and diplomacy. Now, she knew the truth. Her parents had known. Her grandparents had known. Generation after generation had kept the secret, preparing for a day that might never come. It had come. And Katie was part of what happened next. Admiral Laura Bennett sat beside her in the gallery, watching her old friend Nathan deliver the speech they had written together. After decades of pretending to be nothing, Nathan was finally showing the galaxy who he really was. A brilliant strategist, a careful diplomat, the man who had fooled 17 species for 30 years. "What are you thinking?" Katie asked quietly. Laura considered the question. "I'm thinking about all the people who didn't live to see this day. My father, his mother, all the admirals who commanded the secret fleet before me. They spent their lives preparing for this moment, knowing they might never experience it. Was it worth it, all those years of hiding? We'll find out." Laura nodded toward the assembly below. "The next few years will show whether we made the right choice, whether the galaxy can accept what we've become." Below them, Nathan was finishing his speech. "Today, I am proposing a new treaty. The Galactic Covenant of Protection. Every species, no matter how small or weak, will be guaranteed safety. Any attack on a member world will be considered an attack on humanity itself, and we will respond with everything we have." He stepped back from the podium. "The days of hiding are over. The days of watching and waiting are done. Humanity is ready to take its place in this galaxy. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as guardians." The vote was held immediately. 16 species voted in favor. Only the Keth abstained, as they always did, preferring to observe rather than commit. But even they did not vote against. The covenant passed. The galaxy had a new protector. In the weeks that followed, things began to change. Border disputes that had simmered for centuries were suddenly resolved, because nobody wanted to attract human attention. Pirates who had preyed on trade routes vanished, knowing that human ships were now patrolling. Smaller species that had lived in constant fear began to relax, to build, to dream of futures they had never thought possible. It wasn't perfect. Some species resented the humans. Some whispered that this was just another form of control, that the humans would eventually show their true colors. Some waited for the moment when humanity would become the monsters they feared. That moment never came. General Chris Blake retired a year after the revelation, as people had started calling it. At his farewell ceremony, he spoke to the officers who would carry on his work. "Remember why we built all of this," he said. "Not for glory. Not for power. Not for conquest. We built it because the universe is cruel, and someone needs to make it less cruel. That's our job now. That's our responsibility. Don't ever forget it." Lieutenant Megan Torres was promoted to captain and given command of a liberation task force. She spent the next decade finding forgotten slaves and hidden prisoners across the galaxy, bringing them home. Every time she freed someone, she remembered the first time, on Theral, when a prisoner had asked how humans could have defeated the Dominion. She always gave the same answer. "We're not what we seemed." On New Haven, the colony where it all began, Captain Derek Palmer retired from the Defense Force and opened a school. He taught history to children who had never known fear, who had grown up knowing that humanity would protect them. Sometimes he told them about the day the sky filled with ships, when 4 million people learned that they had never really been alone. And on Earth, in the bunker beneath the Swiss Alps that had once commanded the secret fleet, Admiral Laura Bennett finally stood down. Her successor, a young officer she had trained personally, took the command chair and prepared to continue the mission. Before she left, Laura looked around the room one last time. The displays showed the entire galaxy, with human ships marked in blue. Thousands of them, spread across 1,000 star systems, watching and waiting. "Take care of them," she said quietly. "Take care of everyone." She walked out into the sunlight for the first time in what felt like forever. The war was over. The secret was out. Humanity had taken its place among the stars. It had taken 300 years of patience, sacrifice, and preparation. Millions of people had dedicated their lives to a cause they never saw completed. But in the end, it had worked. The galaxy had learned the truth about humanity. They were not weak. They were not harmless. They were the most dangerous species the universe had ever seen. But they were also the most merciful, and that made all the difference. In the vast darkness of space, ships with human crews patrolled the borders between civilizations. They watched for threats. They protected the helpless. They kept the peace. The galaxy finally understood what it meant when humanity went to war. It meant that the war was already over, and humanity had won before the first shot was fired. Because that was what 300 years of preparation looked like. That was what happened when humans decided to fight. The galaxy would never forget.